Most people think procrastination means that you're lazy or even unmotivated. But in reality, it's often a defense mechanism rooted in shame and unprocessed trauma. It's not that your brain doesn't want to act, it's that it doesn't feel safe to act. Can you imagine growing up, you've experienced criticism for making mistakes, pressure to be perfect, emotional neglect, or even unpredictability, early failures that were never even processed with support. Your nervous system now learns to associate actions with danger, not progress. And in turn, shame now turns tasks into threats. Because shame will tell you, if I try and fail, I'll prove that I'm not good enough. If I start and don't finish, I'll disappoint everyone. If I do well, people will expect even more from me. This internal narrative becomes paralyzing. So now you put things off not because you don't care, but because your inner child is trying to avoid further pain. Your inner child is trying to avoid rejection or even exposure. Procrastination now becomes a way of staying emotionally safe, not a reflection of your ambition. Trauma often locks the nervous system into survival patterns like overworking to prove your worth, constantly distracting yourself, shutting down or even numbing, doing everything except what you actually need to do so that you can please others. I talked about this in people pleasing. Procrastination now will emerge from the shutting down and numbing. Your body goes into shutdown, your brain fogs, and the idea of starting becomes really, really heavy. It feels heavy because your system believes action is equal to risk. Now, when your worth has been tied to achievement or even perfection, every task now becomes a test of identity. If I don't do this perfectly, I'll be seen as a failure. If I try and it's not good enough, I'll confirm what I fear about myself. So now the stakes become too high. And instead of starting, you avoid. Not because you're not capable, but because your inner self is terrified of relieving emotional pain. This now leads to the procrastination shame loop, which is the most painful part. Because you procrastinate, you feel ashamed for procrastinating. The shame now reinforces your belief that you are not good enough. And that belief makes starting even harder next time. It becomes a self-reinforcing loop that looks like failure, but is really just unhealed emotional pain playing out in behavior. You don't break procrastination by forcing yourself harder. You break it by exploring the origin of your shame. By validating the emotions underneath your avoidance. By creating emotional safety around mistakes and even imperfections. By uncoupling your self-worth from performance. By building routines that nurture, not punish your nervous system. When you feel safe, you take action. When you feel worthy, you show up. When you heal, the procrastination now stops being necessary. Procrastination is not your enemy. It's a symptom. And like all symptoms, it's trying to tell you something deeper. You are not broken. You're protecting something tender. And the moment you stop judging your delay and start listening to it, is the moment now you begin to reclaim your power. My people, heal. Heal.